If I offered to personally help you get your coloring book idea out of your head and into your hands in the next 30 days, using the exact same process that helped me create and publish my first book in 5 days, then leverage my status as a newly published author to launch and leverage it to create 2 additional income streams in less than 6 months, allowing me to make more money faster than relying solely on one-off book sales on Amazon or Etsy. And I did it with no formal art training or prior design experience. Would you be interested? Hi, my name is Rodney, creator of the Coloring Book Creator Podcast. My first coloring book, Never Too Late to Make It Happen, inspired me to launch my first paid membership community and online course and coaching program that has helped over a dozen first-time authors create and publish over 30 titles and counting, while opening the door for a portfolio of additional income streams like launching a subscription box, landing paid speaking opportunities and offline teaching positions, and creating online courses and paid workshops. So the only question is, are you next? If you answered yes, shoot me a text to 415-851-1222. Again, that's 415-851-1222 and says, yes, I heard you on the podcast, and I'll respond within 24 hours with details on how to take advantage of this offer. Talk soon. You're listening to the Coloring Book Creator Podcast, episode 45. And in this episode, I'm continuing the conversation from episode 43. Do you have a vision for your creative business in 2024 and why you need one? Now, today's focus is titled, Whose Vision Are You Living? And not just for your business, but for your life. So stay tuned. Now, first, let me tell you why having a vision is so important. When you do have a vision, a direction for where you want to go and what you want out of life, you're at the mercy of someone else's vision, an idea of what you do, where you live, and how you live. Think about someone who's never left the town or city or country where they were raised, or been in a job for years, even though they secretly dream of doing something else. But since no one they know has done what they wish for, they stay in the same place for years, perhaps decades, going through the motions, but never really living. I turned 60 this past November, and I spent it in a place that I've longed to revisit. Admittedly, the actual day of my milestone birthday was rather uneventful, to say the least. And the fact that it was so was of my own doing, or should I say undoing. Now, I'll save the details for another episode of the podcast, but all I'll say for now is that that experience was a result of my vision and the fact that, well, to be quite frank, I really didn't have one. I just let the day sort of unfold. Vision believed in and nurtured over time becomes reality. And don't make a mistake about it, we're always getting what we envision. So it's vitally important that we pay close attention to how we're feeling because our visions precede our feelings. Now, if I'm envisioning calamity or believing that things will just not go my way, that will have a direct influence on how I'm feeling, and my feelings will dictate my actions. That's the reason why it's critical to our emotional, mental, and even physical well-being that we set aside quality time to consciously envision what we want. And that's why I created the Crafting Your Future, a visionary retreat for creative entrepreneurs that I hosted recently for members of my Coloring Book Creator Society, and a couple of newbies that just joined us. One of my attendees, Lisa Dolson, an illustrator, surface pattern designer, and now recently published author of the new coloring book, After the Rain, I'll post a link to her interview in the show notes, sent me this quote of her experience in the 3-day retreat, and I'm quoting her. It's funny, I don't know what that retreat did, but honestly, Rodney, it has been amazing. I have so much energy, focus, and drive to make things happen, and I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate your insight, knowledge, and encouragement. I really feel like the sky is the limit. Now, Lisa's share was why I felt in my heart that creating this retreat was so important because I get it. You know, it's hard to set aside time for ourselves to dream, to journal, to envision our futures. First, by believing we even have one. Then take concrete action steps to write it down and map it out visually. And that's exactly what we did over 3 days. We journaled about what we wanted, and we made lists of up to 150 dreams that we desire to experience. Now, this exercise alone forced attendees, myself included, to dig really deep into what matters most in our lives. Think of it like a brain dump. Until you get it out and on paper or computer screen, you don't know what you don't know. On the retreat, I shared how years ago I had a friend who would ask me what I wanted. And every time she did, I could tell her maybe one or two things I wanted if I had to think about it, but I could easily run a laundry list of things I didn't want. And that's a tip I'll give you. Write down everything you don't want if that's easier for you to do, if you have a hard time coming up with what you do want. Write down what you don't want, and then go back and write the opposite of that on your dreams list. The dreams list exercise consists of 3 separate lists: 50 things that you want to do, 50 things you want to be, and 50 things that you want to have. I will tell you already that it's not that easy of an exercise to do. You can write all the material stuff down that you want, the cars, the homes, the trips, and all of those things, the clothes, and whatever your thing is that you really are into. Those things can come fairly easily for most of us. But having to write a total of 150 things, it starts to get challenging. And it's going to force you to have to dig really deep. And exercise for me went past the material things and creature comforts that I wanted and revealed people and relationships that, quite frankly, I needed to focus on forgiving, or that I wanted to forgive, including forgiving myself. That's why I'm telling you this exercise is really deep. Now, once you do that sort of brain dump, if you will, then the next part of the exercise we did was to create digital vision boards in Canva, which were quite revealing and extremely inspirational. And then on the final day, we created an action plan and a roadmap that we employed to help us succeed in our creative businesses. Now, like I said, it was a very productive experience, so much so that I decided to host this retreat every quarter. But depending upon when you're listening to this episode of the podcast, I've decided I don't want to wait. I want to keep the forward momentum going. So at the time I'm recording, it's near the end of January 2024, and I've decided to host another 3-day retreat in February, starting on the 7th, 8th, and 9th with an additional bonus day. So if you're just hearing about this for the first time, this is your second opportunity to join us for the second cohort. Then the plan is not to offer the retreat experience again until April, followed by July, and the last retreat being in September of 2024. Now, at the time I'm recording this, I've not set up an official webpage for the event, although I'll be adding a link to one once I've created it in the show notes, where you can either join the wait list or to sign up in the near future. Again, keep checking the show notes because I will be adding that soon. In the meantime, if you'd like to know more about the retreat, text me the words "I'm in" or "retreat" to 415-851-1222. Again, that's 415-851-1222. And I'll reach out to arrange a time for us to chat within 24 hours. And again, I'll place all of this in the show notes in case you're multitasking and don't have a pen handy to write it all down. Now, speaking of vision, before I wrap this episode, I do want to make a couple of announcements about the podcast and the direction of the Coloring Book Creator moving forward. First is I am making this a formal announcement now that I am in process of writing a book, the first one that I've written in a little over 11 years. Again, I'll be speaking more about that in future episodes of the podcast. But this new book will be the foundation of a rebrand that I'm doing, including the podcast, which will no longer be called the Coloring Book Creator Podcast. So sometime in the coming weeks, the show will be rebranded to Creatorpreneur, a name that I had for another podcast in a previous identity that I never quite let go of because I loved it so much, but the timing for that show wasn't quite right, wasn't quite there. So again, I've decided to rebrand this podcast back to that name because it really encapsulates what I am now doing moving forward, and it coincides with the title of this new book that I'm working on called Paid for My Creativity, From Idea to Paid in 30 Days, which will coincide with the rebranding of the podcast. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, what does that mean for the Coloring Book Creator? Will you stop talking about and or teaching about creating and publishing coloring books? No, absolutely not. I will continue supporting creatives who want to create and publish books, but I just won't limit the conversation to coloring book publishing. For example, in my forthcoming written book, Paid for My Creativity, there's a process I'm going to be going through to create that book. And as such, I'll be offering services to support creative entrepreneurs who dream of writing a book, but quite frankly, are overwhelmed by the process, and writing a book can be. I assure you, I've done it before. But I do want to simplify the process for you. And I personally know that every entrepreneur has at least one book in them. And I want to help you get it out into the world. So stay tuned for those updates happening soon. In addition, I want to share another announcement in that I have been traveling. I've been actually living as a full-time digital nomad. At the time I'm recording this, I'm currently in Southeast Asia, and I have been for the last 5 months. And soon I'll be heading south of the border to Mexico, more specifically to San Miguel de Allende, a place I've longed to visit as a possible permanent relocation spot. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this is because I am creating a series of one-on-one VIP day experiences in San Miguel. So if you have an itch to travel and you'd like to join me in a very creative spot like San Miguel, again, text me to 415-851-1222, and let's have a conversation about it. Now, these will be happening in the late spring and summer of 2024. Again, I'll be talking more about these one-on-one destination retreats. These are going to be, again, just you and me together, spending a full day together, working on whatever projects you want to work on for your business, getting your book out there, whatever you're working on, it's going to be centered around that. And I'll be sharing more about that very, very soon. So stay tuned. So again, keep listening to the podcast and subscribe to my newsletter, which I also have a link in the show notes as well. Okay, so lots of changes for 2024, but all for the better. But I want to leave you with this. No matter what you decide, everything starts with a vision. Whether online or in my upcoming virtual retreat or joining me in person at one of my destination VIP days, if you want 2024 to be the year to take action on your vision, I can't encourage you enough to take yourself and this seriously, because it's your life. We only have one, and I'm committed to living mine in the best way possible, doing something I've always dreamed of doing, which is travel and create, teach, support, coach. And I would love to experience that with the right people who really want to do that and join in that process with me. So if that's something that speaks to you, that speaks to your heart, do not hesitate to reach out to me. Again, you can contact me through my text service, 415-851-1222. Again, that's my phone number. It's not an auto texting service. I actually will manually respond back to you. And we can hop on a Zoom call and have a chat about any of it that I've talked about today. All right. So again, I just want to encourage you to take this opportunity to take this year seriously, take your life seriously, and do what it is that you're here to do, because the world needs it now more than ever. And it's the best gift that you can give yourself. So I'll see you on the next episode. This is Rodney Washington, your host, signing off.